What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be going over the Season 3 Reloaded patch notes and showing you guys the true patch changes. I have all the weapons fully tested at this point. I got them all tested in Plunder, so we're going to go through all the weapons and see what all of the actual damage changes are to them and how they affect TTK. The new assault rifle that was added with this patch will be up on TGD soon. I don't have that tested yet, but I will get that tested either tonight or tomorrow first thing. But like I said, today we're going to go over the patch notes. So starting with the BP50, basically just got a hipfire nerf across the board here. No other changes to its damage values or anything, so the BP50 is still going to be an excellent weapon. Same treatment here as the BP50 for the SVA 545, just a hipfire nerf, just making it a little less good at hitting hipfire shots up close. On to the RAM7, so the max damage decreased to 28 down from 32, so that's the first damage range. Near mid damage decreased, near mid damage range decreased, mid damage range decreased, and then hipfire spread minimum was increased. So a little nerf to the hipfire and big nerfs to the damage. So let's look at TGD and see how this changed. Like I said, all the changes are live on TrueGameData.com and in the apps. So looking at this, we have the RAM7 pre-nerf on the left and RAM7 post-nerf on the right. So this is the current RAM7 on the right. You can see it went down 5 headshot damage in the first range from 38 down to 33, 4 to the neck, chest, stomach, and arms from 32 down to 28, so a significant nerf in the first range there, and then 28 for upper leg and lower leg pre-nerf, 25 post-nerf. So it got a pretty significant nerf there. The first damage range was part of what made the RAM7 so good. Also, its recoil was really easy after the first few shots, so that's kind of why it was so popular. So I think this is going to be significant and finally kick it out of the meta for good with these changes. Also, the damage range changed a little bit. You can see the second damage range, 43.5 pre-nerf, 39.4 post-nerf, and then the last drop-off got moved in about 4 meters as well, from 53 down to 49. No real damage changes in the last two damage ranges, so from 39 and on, it is about the same as it was before, but anywhere inside that 43 and 39, they're the same damage drop-off. They've just been changed a little bit. Anywhere inside 39.4 meters, it is going to be quite a bit worse now after this patch. Alright, over on TGD here, this is the RAM7 TTK difference. So red is the pre-nerf version, orange is the current Season 3 Reloaded version. You can see it's about 1 shot to kill worse in the first range and the second range, and then a little gap there where it's a little bit worse, and then it's just kind of the same past that, about the 40 meter mark, it's about the same, but inside that, it does have an extra shot to kill now, which is pretty significant in that first range. Now, if you're wondering why the TTK chart looks so good, all of you should go watch my video from yesterday. Crazy video about how hit scan is inside 50 milliseconds of bullet travel, which led to these TTK charts. I mentioned in that video that these changes might be reverted on TGD because I need to do a little bit more investigation, but absolutely you guys should go watch that video because it's crazy. So I'll put a link to that in the video description. MTZ 556, same thing that those other ARs had where it had the hipfire nerf. Holger 556 also got hipfire nerf. The MCW got a nice buff to its damage, so mid damage increased to 24 up from 23, and then min damage, so its last damage range, got buffed up to 20 damage from 18. Max damage range was increased by 4 meters from 26 up to 30, and then it also got a little hipfire nerf. So again, let's look at this on TGD and see how the TTK charts and the damage numbers actually changed. Alright, looking at the MCW damage profile changes, as we saw in the patch notes, first damage range and second damage range did not change at all. So this is pre-buff on the left and then the current patch on the right. But the last two damage ranges, basically from 38 to 48, it got about a 2 damage buff across the board. And then in its final damage range, 48 meters and on, it got about a 3 damage buff across the board. So really pretty significant increase to damage there in the last two ranges. This is the TTK chart for the MCW, so you can see that really not a lot of difference out to start with. So red is the pre-buff version, and then orange is the current Season 3 Reloaded version. So a little difference in that damage drop-off range right there from 26 up to 30. So that's a little buff there to the MCW. And then anywhere past 38 meters, it got a significant buff. 1 fewer shots to kill from 38.5 up to 48, and then 2 fewer shots to kill from 38 out to 63. So really a nice buff to the MCW, and it's probably going to be a pretty... I don't think it's going to be the meta, but for people who struggle to control recoil, I do think it'll be pretty good for the long range now. Still going to be slow to kill, but it just has really low recoil. Next up's the FR556. This got a nice buff to its aim down sight movement speed, so 0.2 millisecond increase. They also increased the bullet velocity by 40 milliseconds and the upper torso and upper arm multiplier, so this is the chest multiplier on TGD, and then upper arm were increased to 1.1x up from 1, so it's going to do more damage to the chest and upper arm. And then a bunch of changes to the barrels. Those are not live on TGD yet. I will be getting these attachment changes up very soon, again, probably tonight or tomorrow morning first thing. But all the base weapon changes are up on TGD. Alright, so like the patch notes said, it effectively got a slight damage like profile change. It didn't actually get buffed in terms of its damage values, but it did get an increase in hitboxes for the multipliers in those hitboxes. So now it has a neck, chest, and upper arm hitbox. You can see on the right here, this is the current version. You can see the orange area is all one hitbox, and then the blue area is all one hitbox. Whereas before, on the left here, the pre-buff version all had one hitbox. So neck, chest, and upper arm got a damage buff of 3 in the first range, 3 in the second range, and 3 in the third range. So a nice little buff to the FR556, rewards you for hitting those upper chest and neck shots. Next up, M13B. This got a damage buff, so max damage was increased to 24, up from 23. Headshot multiplier was decreased to 1.4x from 1.5x, so a little bit less headshot damage. Upper torso modifier was increased to 1.2, so it's going to do a little bit more damage to the upper torso, aka chest. And the arms also got an increase to 1.2x, up from 1. So the arms are now going to be the same as the chest or upper torso. So looking at the M13B here, as far as how the damage values actually changed, in the first range, we have the pre-buff version, so pre-patch on the left, post-patch on the right. Headshot went down by 1 damage in the first range, but a significant 2 or 3 damage buff to most of the other areas of the body, and you can see it has this big upper body hitbox now, where arms are the same as chest and neck, whereas before, upper arm, lower arm had the old damage profile that was kind of more from Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 1, where the arms were the same as the lower part of the body, so the legs. But now they've updated the M13B to have the new sort of damage profile where the whole upper body, including arms, is the same, and it got a buff in that first range. Second damage range, headshot went down by 2, the rest of the body went up by either 0 or 2 damage, so neck, chest, and arms went up by 2 damage, but everything else is the same with the little nerf to the headshot. And then the last damage range, same story again. Headshot went down by 2, but neck, chest, and arms went up by 2. So a nice buff to the M13B overall. A little bit less headshot damage, but I still think it's definitely a buff for the gun overall. Looking at the TTK chart for the M13B, we have the pre-buff in red and the current patch in orange. You can see that it's gotten a pretty significant buff here. So it went from 781 down to 710 to the time to kill in the first range. And as my previous video showed, its hit scan out to 30 meters with no attachments, which will be extended with even more attachments. And then it also has 1 less shot to kill out at longer ranges. So a really nice buff to the M13. Do I think it's going to be in the meta? Probably not, just because I think we have some other guns that are going to be a little bit better. We'll see. But a nice buff to make it definitely a more viable choice. Tempus Razorback had a near-mid damage increase to 26, up from 22, so that's huge. That's a 4 damage increase for near-mid, and then min damage also got a 4 damage buff. So at longer ranges, this should be significantly better now. So let's go look at TGD. All right, pre-patch on the left, current patch on the right, as with always. So in the first damage range, no changes, just like the patch notes said, but the second damage range and the final damage range, significant buff. So it went from 29 headshot to 35, 22 to the orange area up to 26, and then 20 for the legs up to 23. And then last damage, same kind of thing. 3 damage increased across the body, 4 damage increase to the head. So a really nice buff to the Tempus Razorback. All right, TTK chart for the Tempus Razorback. Red is pre-patch, orange is current patch. You can see significantly reduced TTK for the orange line compared to the red line. So looks like about 2 shots to kill better from 29.5 meters on. So it already had 720 in the first range. Just a really, really significant buff here. Again, I'm not sure that this will sneak into the meta, but I mean, it's getting close to the point where it's going to be a viable option. The FR Avancer got a really nice buff as well. So 2 damage increase to near mid, 3 damage in the mid damage, and then plus 2 damage in the final damage range. So big buff there. The FR Avancer just bounces too much to really be viable unless it, I mean, even if it had a crazy time to kill, I don't think it's going to be viable, but let's go look at the actual numbers. Damage profile wise, FR Avancer, it has 4 damage ranges, so the last 3 damage ranges all got a buff. You see headshot went up by 3, body shot went up by 2, leg shot went up by 2 in the first range, leg shot went up by 3 in the third range, went up by 3 to the body as well, and then went up by 5 to the head. So really big buff for this as well. Went up by 3 in the last range for legs, went up by 3 for the orange portion, so the body shots for the last range as well, and then 3 for the headshots as well in the last range. So a significant buff to the Avancer. Looking at the TTK chart for the Avancer, similar to the Razorback, it's basically 2 shots to kill out at longer ranges. So from 29.8 meters and on, you have 2 fewer shots to kill now, which is a huge buff to the time to kill. Like I said, FR Avancer is too bouncy to be viable at long range anyway, so I don't really see this sneaking into the meta, but for something like Resurgence, maybe, we'll see. I mean, 715 and then dropping at 40 meters, it could potentially be a viable option for Resurgence, but for big map, there's no chance. Next up, we have the SOA Subverter. Obviously, this was a great weapon for a long time here. It's kind of hard recoil, but huge damage. So they decreased the min damage. So the min damage is the last damage range to 25, down from 23. So long range, it's not going to be great anymore. And then the max damage range was decreased by about 2 meters. So in its first damage range, it's going to be a little bit worse. All right, so this is the Subverter's actual damage changes. Pre-nerf on the left, current patch on the right. You can see it didn't change in the first 2 damage ranges from 0 up to 42 meters. It is the same damage values, but you do have that 2 meter nerf. So it went to from 0 to 23 meters before. Now it goes from 0 to 20.6. So a little bit of a nerf for the first damage range. But the big change is that last damage range. So in its final damage drop off, it has 3 damage less to every part of the body, which is pretty significant. That's going to be probably 1 shot to kill more in those last ranges. So a decent nerf. Down on the TTK chart, you can see the red pre-nerf version was actually about 2 shots to kill faster before the nerf. So huge nerf to the SOA Subverter. Don't see this being used at all for the big map anymore. Still has a pretty good time to kill for the smaller maps, but even that, with this drop off here, I don't really see this being the pick anymore for either map. MTZ-762 got a little bit of a buff, so they reduced the aim down sight time from 280 down to 260 milliseconds. And then the Jack Thunder LMG also had the aim down sight time reduced by 20 milliseconds. I have not updated the attachments yet, so the Jack Thunder does not have that change on TGD, but it will very soon. SO14, only when it's on full auto mode, had its sprint to fire time decreased by about 45 milliseconds, and then its aim down sight time decreased by 20 milliseconds. So very small change there for a weapon that doesn't really get used. Next up, the HRM9. Before I do this, I just want to say, if you guys like all the work that I put into this took a lot of hours jumping into the plunder and actually testing all these damage values manually. Obviously, building the site takes a ton of work as well, making YouTube videos, all that. If you appreciate that, don't forget to sub to the channel, drop a like on the video, drop a comment to help me out with the algorithm. And as always, the best way to support is just direct subscriptions on TGD. That makes me be able to make whatever YouTube content I want and just be honest with you guys rather than trying to be sensationalist and have, you know, crazy thumbnails and things. I can just make videos because I have a second income source. So really, really appreciate that as always. But let's get on to the HRM9. So max damage decreased to 28, down from 31. So the first damage range got a 3 damage nerf, which is pretty significant for an SMG. The near mid got decreased by 4 from 28 down to 24. Mid damage decreased from 24 down to 22. And then max damage range decreased from 11.3 down to 10.4. So I think the HRM is dead from this. Let's go look at it on TGD. HRM pre-nerf damage values on the left, and then today's post-patch values are on the right. So in the first damage range, we lost 3 headshot damage, 3 neck, chest, and arm damage. We lost 3 stomach and leg damage. So pretty significant there. That's probably at least 1 shot to kill difference. We'll look at the TTK chart in a second. Second damage range, we did get that 1 meter reduction. So the first damage range used to go to 11.3, now it goes to 10.4, and significant nerf to the damage. So 5 less headshot damage, 4 less upper body damage, and then 4 less stomach and leg damage. Also got nerfed in the third damage range. So headshot went from 27 down to 25. Neck went from 25 down to 23. Chest and arms are the same as that, and then minus 2 damage for stomach and legs. And then the final drop off, which doesn't really matter for an SMG, was exactly the same. So really significant nerf here to the HRM. Time and time again with SMGs, we see that the TTK ends up being king, and that's just because you can have the best stats in every way for all the other stats, but if you can't kill the target as fast as they can kill you, you're going to lose fights up close. So this is a huge nerf. The HRM is completely dead. It's 1 shot to kill more out to 10.4 meters, and then 2 shots to kill more from 11 out to 24. So yeah, HRM completely out of the meta, finally. The Ram 9 got a slight increase to its horizontal and vertical recoil. Not a huge change here, but just a slight increase. Rival 9 got a little buff, so max damage increased to 26 from 25. Max damage range increased to decreased to 12.19 from 14, so a 2 meter reduction in the first damage range. Lower arm and hands were increased to 1.1x up from 1, so a nice buff to your arm multipliers there. And the lower torso was increased as well, so we're going to have that big upper body hitbox now. Rival 9 damage values, how they actually changed. So you can see on the left here the damage profile. The stomach and lower arms used to be different from chest and upper arms and neck, but now over on the right we have the updated damage profile, so much bigger upper body hitbox. That's a nice buff on top of having that increased damage in the first range. And I did nerf the damage range a little bit, but you do get a little bit better damage, so that is going to be a nice change there. On the TTK chart here, you can see that that change to the damage values in the first range actually did reduce the shots to kill by 1, so we went from 726 down to 660. Now, the competitive SMGs tend to be around 600 milliseconds right now, so as I said, TTK is king for SMGs, so I don't think this is going to be a meta option even after the changes, but it's probably going to be usable. 660 is not terrible. And then you can see that on combination shots on the TTK, because we got that changed damage profile, it actually did also reduce one shot to kill from 24 up to 35 meters on the combination shot percentages. WSP-9 got a really nice buff. They just nerfed this like last patch up to 110 milliseconds, but now they brought the sprint to fire from 110 down to 66 milliseconds. So that is a huge change. The WSP-9 is held back by its open bolt delay. So if you don't know what that is, it's basically just a delay from when you pull the trigger to when the bullet actually is fired. Most guns don't have this. WSP-9 does. And reducing the sprint to fire by about the same as the open bolt delay. It has, I think, like 35 millisecond open bolt delay, something like that. So now we have buffed the sprint to fire below the amount that the open bolt delay hurts us, because sprint to fire time for this gun really is sprint to fire plus open bolt delay, just because there's always an open bolt delay. So now the sprint to fire is going to be in line or better than the other weapons, even including that open bolt delay. So I think this is a really nice change for the WSP. I think it's going to be an extremely meta option. Onto the Striker. Striker has not gotten much love throughout this game. We've seen some Striker 9 changes, things like that, but the Striker hasn't been used much. The min damage, so this is the last damage range, got a 5 damage buff, so hugely better in its last damage range. And then the mid damage range increased from 35 meters, or from 30 meters to 35 meters, so a 5 meter buff for that middle damage range. So looking at how the weapon actually changed, you can see on the left, Striker pre-buff, it had 5 damage ranges, and now it only has 4. I need to double check this just to make sure that I didn't screw something up, but they do word things weird in the patch notes sometimes, and you can see that in its last damage range, it now does 5 damage more if they just removed that last damage drop. It used to do 25 to the neck and chest, and now it does 30 in its last range, so I'll double check this, but I'm pretty sure I did it right. I'm pretty sure they just removed the last damage drop off. Looking at the Striker on the TTK chart, we have red is the pre-buff, orange is the current patch, so post-buff. You can see that it got a huge change to its damage and TTK out at the last damage ranges. This might be an awesome sniper support now. It's got great competitive, semi-competitive time to kill for an SMG up close, and then it's going to have pretty good time to kill at range as well, which tends to be what people really like for sniper supports. So we'll see how that lines up, but I do think it's going to be pretty solid now. Next up, DG58 LSW. This has been a weapon that's really been good forever. It's been around the top forever, but just not like exceptional. It's never been the best of the best, but it got a nice buff in this patch. The upper torso, so chest, was increased to 1.1x up from 1. The arms and hands, so all arm damages were increased up to 1.1x as well, and then the stomach got increased by up to 1.1x. So this is gonna be a nice buff. I think that that's going to reduce the shots to kill by 1 in almost all situations, so it's probably going to be a really good weapon now. I would not be surprised if this ends up being the meta. All right, looking at the actual changes to the DG58, you can see that before it had a different neck hitbox, so it did 31 and 29 to the neck in the first and second damage range, and then had the same values as the rest of the body. Now they've just basically moved that neck hitbox and made it the whole upper body hitbox, so stomach, chest, and arms are all the same as what neck was before, which does change the TTK, so it's going to be a very good weapon now. All right, looking at the DG58 on the actual TTK chart, this is on chest, so if you put it on combination, those damage values must be really close to the edge of changing TTK, because as soon as you include those leg shots at all, the TTK goes back to being the same between pre-patch and post-patch. But if you just look at chest, which is also going to be a very common TTK to get just because you have that huge upper body hitbox now, you can see it's 1 shot to kill fewer at all ranges. So it's going to be a really nice TTK, 765 in the first range, and then 900 in the last range. So really nice buff to the gun there. This is going to be, in my opinion, this is going to be highly competitive for the meta. On to the Bruen. The Bruen's been pretty competitive in the meta for a long time. Again, it's been kind of near the top, especially for big map, but never like exceptionally good. Kind of like the Ram 7 was exceptionally good. It was never quite like that, but it was always an excellent choice. So they've actually decreased the max damage down to 26 from 28. So in the first damage range, got a nerf. Leg modifier was decreased to 1x, down from 1.05. Lower torso modifier was decreased to 1x, down from 1.1x. So pretty significant nerf to the Bruen in the first range and at all ranges with those damage modifier changes. So exactly what the patch notes said. You can see the actual hitboxes changed, so stomach is now the same as legs, whereas before it was the same as chest. And then just a damage nerf across the board, about 2 damage in the first range, and 3 or 4 damage depending on the hitbox in the last range. So a huge nerf to the Bruen. I'm realizing for the Bruen it didn't say anything about the min damage range being decreased or the min damage being decreased. So this used to have like a bugged, it had like a bugged damage profile where it had a drop off at like 100 meters and a drop off at like 300 meters listed in game. And obviously those weren't on TGD because they weren't relevant, because you're never fighting people at 150 meters. So I'm wondering if they just changed that and didn't really put it in the patch notes, because like you just saw, the last damage was decreased a lot. So let's look at this on the TTK chart and you're going to see that. So yeah, as expected, even though the patch notes didn't mention anything about the last damage range, it was also nerfed in the last damage range. Looks like 2 shots to kill, 1 or 2 shots to kill worse in all ranges. So huge nerf to the Bruen. Not really going to be a viable option anymore. TAQ Eradicator got a nice buff here. They decreased the sprint to fire time by about 60 milliseconds. And then they decreased the aim down sight time by about 10 milliseconds. The snipers say they all got a nerf here. So the Stalker says it got a 70 meters per second nerf to its bullet velocity. The Cat says it got a 40 meter per second nerf. The MWIII says that it got a 60 meter per second nerf, as well as an aim down sight nerf. But those bullet velocity nerfs are not in the game. I've checked the base data and they're just not in the game yet. I have them up on TGD because I'm sure they're going to patch this and put them in because they were in the patch notes, but they're not actually live in the game yet. Last up, we have pistol changes. So pretty much all of the pistols, or at least the Modern Warfare 3 pistols, got a buff to their movement speed. So I'm not going to go through all these, but Core 45, Renetti, Tier, Stinger, 50GS, X12, so that's actually from Modern Warfare 2, and the 9mm Damon, those all got movement speed buffs. And then the Stinger got a little buff to its upper torso multiplier, so now it does the same to chest as it did to neck and head before. So just a little buff there. It already had phenomenal TTK with the Akimbo, but it's just really hard to get the hip fire cone down small enough to make this viable, unfortunately. But yeah, this buff is a nice change and makes the TTK even better for that chest damage. Alright guys, that's it for the video. A ton of effort goes into making the website function, gathering all this data, getting it to you guys in a digestible manner. So as always, the best way to support is just direct subscriptions to True Game Data through the website. $5 a month, you get access to all the premium features, and you help support the YouTube channel and the website. And we really appreciate you guys for watching the videos, subscribing, any form of support we appreciate. But that's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.